Welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. In this podcast, topics will be discussed that promote the daily management of life. While this information is meant to supplement your journey towards healthy emotional well-being, it is not intended to take the place of seeing a licensed mental health professional. I am Dr. Robin C. Wiley, a licensed clinical social worker with a private therapy practice in New Jersey. Thank you for joining today's conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. This is Dr. Robin, and I'm happy to be here with you all today. I believe we are streaming live right on my YouTube channel, also going by the name of Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. And so I do hope that you will subscribe to that. I am joined by Bryce, my producer. Hi, Bryce.
How you doing? What's going on?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm waiting for next week. It's only 2 days or three. Well, it's at 2.5 days, but you can always pull through a half day, but only 2 days of work for work. And then
this week. So this week is okay.
This is that week, right?
Yes, this is the short week for especially anybody that works in education and people that are just taking time off and that type of thing. I know I just finished.
This is that week.
Finished up my teaching of the semesters at the 2 universities that I teach at. Yeah. So just wrapping up things and getting grades and stuff in, which is always a happy time.
Yes.
To get that, to get that break. This is a time where I think we start to lose a little momentum.
Sure.
Because, you try to get to this break because and depending on what you celebrate, but December time, the December holidays.
It's time.
Right, where you take that time, you need a little bit of time to reflect and to hopefully renew. But I think, coming off of the summer into the fall, you have a little bit more energy and stuff. And you're like, okay, we're going to hit the ground running. And then by October, November, you're like, okay, we need that Thanksgiving couple days off.
Thanksgiving and President's Day.
Yes, all those holidays.
All those in the school.
Right. And then you get to December and it's like, all right, can we just make these couple of weeks and then we can.
And we're good to go.
Yeah,
the issue is, I will say for everybody out there that's working in schools or whatever, is because we're coming off of quote unquote pandemic or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. It's become a little more overbearing this year.
Right. And we're not really, and the thing is, we're not out of it. So I think,
exactly.
a check-in before we kind of delve into where we're going today.
Right.
But yeah, just, checking in on how everybody's doing out there, because it is still among us, with the different variants of COVID and, all of the different warnings and, and the masking mandates and the encouragement to get vaccinated and all that kind of stuff. It's still a lot going on. Things canceling,
and adjustments being made now. I just read something where restaurants in Philadelphia,
are shutting down,
New York and stuff, they're starting to shut down.
Right.
Which I know people thought we'll never get back there, but we never left there.
No, we never left. We just we made some. I think they made adjustments to kind of make things a little bit better.
Right. But we're still there. We still have to do our due diligence. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a personal thing for people, in terms of, where you stand about masks, where you stand about vaccinations or what have you. But it's to keep ourselves safe because, people are still going into the hospital. There's still lives lost due to, this pandemic. And we're not out of it yet. And so I hope everybody is being careful and doing what we need to do because, we definitely want to see our families. We want to be with people, but we still have to, be careful. And being diligent and being responsible. I think that's the main thing, being responsible. You know what I'm saying?
Right. What that means to people, but
whatever that means. Yeah. Right. That is subjective.
That is a very subjective word in terms of what people feel their responsibility is and that type of thing. So
absolutely.
So certainly, our last show was on, how to cope with the holidays. So we, hopefully everybody is on the other side positively of, Thanksgiving. And now we get ready to go into a longer sort of holiday season. December is
it's a lot going on in December.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Look, a lot more money spent in December and
Absolutely.
that type of thing.
Oh, definitely.
So, but we're also getting ready to embark upon, the new year. We're getting ready to go into 2022. And so today, of course, as I always like to take the time in December, to encourage my clients and for myself to, reflect on, the past year and where do we want to go into the new year. So today's episode is really about preparing for the new year and what that means for us. So, and like I said, as this year comes to an end, which is like around the corner, you start to see everybody's starting to reflect on the new year, on the past year rather,
right.
Whether that is, we've got, what were the top songs of this year? What were the top movies of this year?
Right.
All that kind of stuff. It encourages us to kind of like think about, what has worked for us this year, what maybe have been a challenge for us this year. But more importantly, what do we want for the upcoming year?
Right.
What do we want for ourselves? So there is this tendency of people to set like New Year's resolutions.
Oh yeah, I already started.
Yeah, that's always a thing for new, and they usually related to like improving ourselves, things that we feel we need to be doing, to improve our life, whatever it could be. It could, people come up with all different types of things, but usually it's about improvement or what have you. A little self-disclosure. I have stopped doing New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, because I'm going to talk about that in a second.
Sure.
But I usually focus more on my intentions for the upcoming year.
Okay.
And I don't do them related to the new year. I do them related to my birthday.
Got you. And that makes sense, though.
Yeah. So for me, and really it's because, because I feel like, one, I'm one of those people where maybe some people are not like this, but my birthday is very important to me.
Sure.
So,
no,
and
absolutely.
my birthday is actually tomorrow. So my birthday is, so my birthday is like, because it's that 5 days from Christmas.
Yeah.
Did
you get robbed? You got robbed?
No. Actually,
you
I did not. No, I actually have not. My family has always been very, very, since I was a kid, very good with, we're going to separate your birthday.
Wow. So you got, you got the regular birthday gifts.
Yes.
And then you didn't get shortchanged on Christmas. Oh, wow.
No. But my birthday has always been much more important to me.
Wow.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not taking anything away from, depending on our religious beliefs, what Christmas represents. Right. But my birthday, has always been.
Listen, first of all, let me clap it up, not just for your birthday, right?
Well, thank you.
But also clap it up for the Wiley family too, because they did not rob you.
Yeah.
And most people I know, they get robbed.
Yeah. So the Wileys, the Wileys and the Taylors.
Absolutely. Let's
the
Wileys and
Taylors.
Give them a little shout out.
Yes, definitely. I've never felt like that. There's never been that like, oh, I'm gonna combine your gift, And my friends who I consider my family too, absolutely, have always, done that separation.
My kids were born in December, they would have got robbed, yo.
Okay. Like, let me just be honest, they would have got robbed.
They got robbed.
So let's go back. Look, I digress for a second, because like a little self-serving announcement there about the birthday. But which I'm sure some of my listeners that are close to me will really find some humor in that. So one of the things with resolutions is, so we even though people set New Year's resolutions, like, usually like end of the year, the beginning of the year, like, oh, these are the things I'm going to do or whatever, the statistics on that show that they're often broken by the end of January, if not before.
Yeah.
So people go ahead, they go in gung-ho for these resolutions, and then by the end of January, they're done. Right. And so we think about like, well, why? Why do we not stick with these things? Especially because they're usually, things to improve ourselves for our own betterment, whatever area of life that's in. But there's some reasons why we don't stick with these. I mean, and just to kind of go into that for a little bit, one is our goals tend to be too large or too general. Mm-hmm. So they may not be specific enough. You know what I mean? And so what I mean by too large is, we tend to go into like this, we apply all or nothing types of thinking or an all or nothing approach, which is, I'm going to work out every single day of the week for 2 hours. You know what I mean? And we don't think about like, is that realistic for our lifestyle, how we're living now, what we're doing now, or really can it just fit in our schedule?
Right.
Right. And another part of that all or nothing thinking is, there's no room allowed for less than 100%. So you're not giving yourself any type of wiggle room, any flexibility in whatever that goal is. Because resolutions are essentially goals. They're things, you want to accomplish. The other thing is we may not stay consistent, so, and I have been working with a lot of individuals that I work with on redefining what consistency means, because a lot of times we think consistency means every day, 24/7 or whatever. Consistency really means that you are sticking with whatever it is you're doing. So if you miss a day, you get back to it. Right. You haven't given up on it completely.
It's constantly in your peripheral.
Exactly. So it is something that is you incorporate as part of your life. You build in, and that's another thing too with resolutions. We don't build in a way to make sure it can happen. So we don't set ourselves up, and this is not my phrase, it's a phrase that some organizations use, and I know some folks that work for those organizations, that we don't set ourselves up for success.
Right, I got you.
So we don't create, so it's just like there are things that we do in our daily routine that are just part of our daily routine. We don't have to think about it. Right. You get up, you wash your face, you brush your teeth, you do all that. You don't have to think about those things. Right. Other things that we're trying to do, new behaviors, which new behaviors require some more work. Right. Because it's not something that's ingrained in us. It's not a part of our rote daily activity. Right. So we have to put some more effort.
Right, I got you.
And like I said, the goals may not be, maybe unrealistic for our situation. Right. Someone saying, well, I want to start a business this year, what have you. Not to say that can be an unrealistic goal, but if you're not going to put the action behind it, the things that you need to do to be able to achieve that, then, how dedicated are you really to that goal? Right. So one of the things, okay, so we're talking about why we don't achieve these things or why we don't stick with the resolutions, and I think, motivation can be a part of that, but I think motivation is an overrated thing. Right. There's a lot of things that, we sort of feel like motivation and discipline and all that is a big part of how we accomplish things. But honestly, it is the day-to-day grind that causes us to achieve what we want to achieve in our life. Yeah. So motivation wanes, so does discipline. Right. What I mean by that is, you may be motivated on a scale from 1 to 10 at a 9 one day, but then the next day you might be a 5.
It changes, right?
Right. And what is your motivation may change, what I mean, as you start to accomplish things or whatever. So I don't think we can necessarily use those as the reasons why we don't accomplish things. Right. So when we set a goal, it needs to be, and again, this is information that is all over the place about goal setting or whatever. They should be SMART. And SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, and this is coming from the world of counseling, social work, all of that. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-oriented. That's right. So what that means is specific. In other words, saying a goal and it's not to take away from general goals, but general goals aren't always specific to the behaviors that we need to do. So they might guide our behavior, but the behavior itself or the behavioral changes are what usually is what we need to focus on. Right. So specific, let's say somebody has a goal of, I want to be healthy. So that's a general goal. I want to be healthy. A specific goal would be I'm going to increase my health by walking every day. You know what I mean? Because that's more specific. That's something that you're actually doing. That's more action oriented. Measurable. How are you going to know that you've achieved the goal? So what is it? What are you going to do? Are you going to walk 1 day a week, 2 days a week for 30 minutes? What are you going to do? So that way, you have a way of knowing, okay, I'm actually achieving this goal. I'm working towards it because these are the parameters of the goal. Right. This is how I'm defining it. Right. Attainable. Is this something you can achieve? Is this something that is doable in your schedule? And that's what I'm saying, setting yourself up for success. it's just like making a promise to somebody. But in this situation, you're making a promise to yourself. It's something you're going to do for you. So in making that promise to yourself, is this something you can really commit to doing?
Right.
You know, or do you need to have some room and some space for some flexibility in that? And so I'll give it an example of that. If somebody says, you know what, I want to start investing money. So I want to put $50 in an investment account every week. Right. Okay. And then when you look at your budget, you know, you don't have $50 to put in there. Right. So then is it attainable? Is it not? Maybe not. Right. So maybe you need to adjust that somewhat. Maybe $50 a month or whatever. So
maybe adjust the pricing of it. You know, when I hear you talking about because really what you're doing is you're just creating a plan, right? You're creating a strategy.
Right. And it's a strategy
like you said,
behind
for success, right? I think
the
about
action steps.
I think about the action, right? I think about when I used to smoke cigarettes. And I say, oh, you know what? January, I'm done. I quit. I'm cold turkey. And it'll work. People do. It'll work. Yeah. It'll work for a good, maybe 12, 24 hours, something like that. But then it changes immediately. You know what I'm saying? But once I was able to do a little bit, and then grow.
Right. So you titrated yourself. Right. That's called titration. So you are making, and sometimes titration, harm reduction, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Because what happens is that you set it up. So you set yourself up for success. When you said, okay, you know what, I'm going to do a little bit at a time to allow myself, to be able to really also enjoy that you have reached the goal. Because what happens is when we do something all or nothing, when we don't do all, then we consider it nothing. Right. So then the goal loses, we lose our sense of achievement and accomplishment, and we become defeated by that. And then we just are like, forget it. I'm not doing anything. Right. The other thing too is with some things some goals, especially if you're talking about changing a behavior or a habit. So if you're talking about changing a negative habit to something more positive, we have to look at what's going to be the replacement. Right. You know what I mean? That is, for some people, we don't think about that. So like giving up smoking or giving up drinking or something like that. Like you have to work on what would be your coping strategies, because those things are, believe it or not, a coping strategy. Right. So how are you going to then deal with the triggers that push you to that behavior to begin with? Right. So whether it's how are you going to deal with stress? How are you going to deal with, feeling frustrated or whatever types of feelings you feel that cause you to like, oh, I need to smoke a cigarette or whatever. Right. What are you going to replace that with? So sometimes we don't think about that. And that's all part of the planning too. Right. And that helps you to make the goal more realistic. Right. So that gets into the R in SMART, realistic. Right. So is this something that is, and that's kind of like achievable. It's it goes hand in hand with some of the other things, but is this a realistic goal for you to be able to do? So I think life, of course, where we sit, like, and just in life of being maturated to a certain level, the cold turkey or the immediate oversold. Oversold. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I think people do it. I think there are people that do that. They do quit things cold turkey, or they. And in some instances you have to. In some instances you have to. Right. Where you might need to immediately, just because of certain situations. So depending on what is on the other end. Depending on what that is. Yeah, like a health situation. Like if somebody has a health event that prompts that someone, usually a medical professional, say, hey, you can't do this anymore. You got to stop doing this. Right. Right. But the idea is when you're trying to achieve something new, you want to be able to stick with it. You want it to be able to last. So that's why, believe it or not, the accomplishment is in the length of time. So someone can say, okay, I stopped cold turkey smoking cigarettes. I haven't smoked cigarettes in 3 weeks or whatever. Right. Somebody can say that. But the idea is, do you have the things in place to make that a long-term accomplishment? Right. So that you are continuing that throughout. You won't pick up another cigarette. So that's where all these other things come into. The interesting thing when it came, for me, I can only speak on myself, when it came to smoking cigarettes, it doesn't matter how many times I did the cold turkey or we took medication, the patch and all that. The first thing had to happen first. I had to kill it in my head. Well, that's what I was going to go to.
Oh, okay.
But let me go. Yeah, we're on the same page. But because I don't want to minimize that.
Sure, absolutely.
The mental part of this and the mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the mindset.
Yeah.
But let me just say, okay, so the T is time oriented for SMART.
Right,
So
I got you.
specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time oriented.
Gotcha.
Time oriented really means that, depending on what the goal is, like what's the amount of time, like whether it's how much you're going to do this every week, whether it's, how long you're going to stick with this goal. Like when a lot of people talk about during the beginning of the year, a lot of people talk about giving up, like they give up alcohol for the first 90 days or something like that. And I mean, what's your why? So that's another reason too.
Right.
Like, do you feel like you're drinking too much? Or because if you're going to give it up for 90 days and then go right back to it, then are you really?
You just went on break.
I mean, you know what I mean? Just not, look, don't judge me.
It's all good.
But it's just like, people will give up sugar. Like people will do like a no sugar, no flour type of thing or whatever.
Right.
So if you're giving up sugar, are you doing that? Because some people do it like as a detox or it's part of like a diet thing or whatever. Right. But then, so that may be a time oriented thing. Well, okay, I'm not going to do this for a month or whatever. Right. But then what type of change are you making after that?
Right, gotcha.
Because you want to see the effects of.
Right.
Yeah. So your why is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like why for anything that we're trying to do. The why is always important and significant.
Absolutely.
What is your purpose? What is your reason for doing this? What do you want to see the outcome or what have you?
Sure.
But the mindset, you have to get your mind right, as I like to say. You got to get your mind wrapped around it. You got to get your mind right because any of our vices or whatever the things, that we do that we feel like are not the best for us, or even accomplishing something or even, a lot of it is about our thought process and how our mind is functioning when we're doing those things, when we're not doing them or what have you. So, and, your mind, can play tricks on you. You know what I mean? We can, a lot of times our thought process about stuff tends to send us in a direction that's contrary to maybe where we want to be. So we have to be in tune to that. And that's where being mindful, staying in the moment, having that awareness of our thoughts.
Right.
Sometimes even before we're about to achieve the goal. So for instance, if you want to achieve something or you're setting a goal and you in your mind feel like it's something you really can achieve, then you're not going to probably achieve it.
You're not going to do it. Right.
So you have to believe it.
Right.
To be it.
You have to believe it in order to achieve it.
Right. Believe it, to achieve it, to be it, to see it, all of it.
That's it.
You really do. You really do.
Yeah.
So that mindset is very important. So I also suggest, and maybe just a different spin on setting New Year's resolutions is setting intentions. Setting forth your intentions, which are to me positive, because when I intend to do something, intentions usually are stated in the positive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not what I won't do, it's what will be.
What will be.
Yeah, what will be, what will happen, that type of thing. And it's sort of, when you think about it's like a visual vision board. Because a vision board is, you're putting some stuff on a poster board, and nothing against vision boards. But that's another way of manifesting. People talk about that. But to set forth intentions is really creating like a pathway, and it helps to guide your behavior, but you're verbalizing it.
Right.
I will be healthy. I will be financially stable. I will be, those types of things. And so then you sort of back into, well, what are the action steps I need to take to get there? Right. So that's as a professional, that's what I usually recommend. I feel like, it allows us some room for, and don't get me wrong, it still needs to be more specific in terms of when you think about the steps that you need to take to get there. But to me, it helps us to guide our behavior, because that's the thing too. It's like, you can be, you can have a goal, or you can say, this is what, I'm dedicated to or whatever. But if your action does not align with that, then it's a moot point. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So, and
let me ask you that, because I don't want to.
No. We're good.
And maybe it's going back to consistency, right? So, sometimes, and I talk about my son, right? So, consistency. People think that consistency is measured by just achieving the result. And it's not. I think consistency is achieved by continuing to pursue it. It's a constant pursuit of it.
And so I'm telling you, I feel like you have my notes because I always do. I always I like a free flow, but I always have my notes. Right. And so one of the things, staying the course. That's consistency.
Meaning it's a long game, not a short game. It is.
It's just like, when we were talking earlier off, camera about the journey.
Right.
And how everybody's on a journey. That journey does not stop. That journey just takes different forms.
Right. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So because the journey is life.
Right.
And so like if you're working on like these, like I like to call them the big picture goals.
Sure.
Big picture goals are like, my health, or finances, or, the career, for some people, what have you. But if you're working on those things, then it's not like, okay, you've achieved it. Here it is. There's an end to it and you don't need to do anything more, or even like emotional well-being, like that's a constant.
Right.
That's not something that like, okay, you know what, I've reached this age.
That's
so
it.
I no longer need to work on my emotional well-being or my betterment of myself.
Right.
No, that's so when you think about a big picture goal, it really is about, staying the course with what you want to achieve. And at different stages in life, that changes.
Right.
As we get older, and not to say, because I think young people, health is important, but as you get older, you realize health becomes that much more important.
Right.
Because health takes on a different form. It you know what I mean? Issues that you may have look very differently when you're older than when you're young.
No, absolutely.
So again, with the consistency, like you were saying, it's even if you don't take action daily, you stick with it. You're staying the course. You're still on the road. You you sat down for a second and you get a break.
Right.
But you're going to get back to it the next day. So that's consistency.
And I think I learned that, you mentioned it earlier, right? Some of these buzzwords like harm reduction, right? So, so I know when I was in Baltimore, we did this this kind of perspective of reduce the use, right? People that were dealing with substance abuse issues, and then they called it relapse prevention. Right. And I kind of had to understand that, and meaning that, hey, listen, you know what? Sometimes on the road to recovery, so on the
whatever that recovery is,
whatever it is, journey or whatever.
Yes, because we use it in the world of substance abuse.
But it's really life.
But anything that you want to achieve, any habits that we have that may be negative in nature, there is we're on that wheel, that stage of change kind of wheel, which is a whole nother podcast. We'll talk about that another day, but that goes into motivational interviewing and that kind of stuff. But we're on that where, you make the decision that you want to take action against it at some point. But what happens is when something has been because a lot of times habits have been a part of our life for a long time.
Right.
So when something has been a habit for a long time, it's not always easy to just say, I'm going to stop doing that. And then I'm going to do something else without replacement behaviors or whatever. Right. And so that's where that idea of, lessening maybe the behavior to start out with, and gradually getting yourself to the point where you no longer need that behavior.
Yeah, it's funny
for that habit.
My son said, I just feel like, I'm always taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I said, but you're still moving,
right?
So even though you might take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you're still moving ahead. You know what I'm saying?
You're still moving ahead. And there's a lot of things that play into that. I mean, there's life, things happen to us. And there's so many things that happen to us. Like if we could just be in control of ourselves.
Yes.
And I'll explain what I mean by that. But if we just had ourselves to like if it was only within us, like anything that triggered us, whatever, it was only about us, life would probably be like super much easier.
Right.
But the reality is that we're dealing with external things that we have absolutely no control over that impact us in various ways.
Right.
And so that can cause us to have certain reactions or to need to go to those habits. Right. So that's kind of a lot of times where relapse comes in.
Got you.
And you can relapse into anything. If somebody was like, you know what, I don't just trying to think of an example of that. Like if somebody says, oh, you know what, I clean my house every week. Right. And that's something I do every week. That's a habit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so all of a sudden something occurs where the person's not doing that,
right?
And maybe they didn't do that at some other time in their life. Then maybe they've relapsed back to like, okay, now I'm not cleaning my house every week or whatever. So that's a relapse.
Right.
I think we have to look at the definition of words. Relapse is going back to a behavior that was at some point undesirable.
And that you're trying to change.
Right, that you're trying to change.
But knowing that that's part of, and that's tough too, because then then you could try to like manipulate your mind or whatever. But like I don't want to do fried foods. Okay. Like they're no good for me. Right. But, if I smell some fried chicken, I'm probably going to eat a little piece, right?
Right.
So,
which is not going to do you in. It's just if you eat it every day.
But that's so. I said I'm not eating no fried foods. But then so I'm good for like 3 weeks.
Right.
Then it's something about Popeye's chicken, KFC chicken. A little piece of chicken. Just one little piece of chicken. I'm good. I've relapsed, but I'm like, once I realized, I'm like, man, it was good chicken, but you know what? No, I'm back on my game. So, and I think that's a process that we all go through.
But the one thing that you may want to reconsider is when you say, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
Because here's the thing, that our mind, look, the way our mind is set up.
Ain't it powerful?
We don't like to be told, most people don't like to be told what they're not going to do, even if you're telling it to yourself.
Sure enough.
So by limiting yourself of something,
right.
And don't get me wrong, because it depends on what it is.
Right.
We got different levels of things when we talk about addiction and all that kind of stuff. But by limiting yourself by saying, okay, I can't have this or what have you, then it's almost like you almost may feel as though, well, but I deserve it, or why, especially if you've had it before. And so there has to be maybe more of a conversation with yourself about, well, that's something that I don't prefer to eat because these are the effects of that.
Right.
And so because of the effects of it, then that's my why.
Absolutely. I got you.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I don't eat I don't do any like processed sugar.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's a whole other story.
Right.
But so I don't do any, and I haven't done it for like some months. Okay. So it's not that I don't get any sugar, because I get sugar in a more natural way through fruit or whatever. So I don't do any processed sugar. So, of course, the holidays, you're around cakes, cookies, all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, it's not that I don't see that. And when I see it, I have to do a little conversation with myself. Okay. And that conversation goes like, well, if you have that, then what is it? Well, twofold. One, I remember how it was to stop when you stop eating processed sugar, what your body goes through, like to get that sugar. It's like a detox. Wow. Yeah, when you go through. Wow. Yeah, it's not pleasant. Okay. So I remember that. That is there. I keep that in my mind. Right. Okay. But the other thing too is I also think about what I've accomplished, and I think about with the journey that I'm on. And so because of that, I said, you know what? It's not really worth it. Right. For me, because I can have an alternative. I can have something else that is sweet and that tastes good and that I won't have any physical effects from. Got you. So, and don't get me wrong, like, over time that becomes more of just like the record, I always say, we have the tape that plays in our head. Right. So we can play the negative stuff or we can play the positive stuff. Right. So sometimes it becomes important to create the message that you want to send to yourself. Right. Which for you with the chicken would be, okay. And like you said, if you have it, and you're like okay with having it, because there's also some guilt and shame that can be associated when we feel like we're not accomplishing something or what have you. So you have to define, like, is it about all or nothing that I can never have chicken again? Because that might not be realistic. That's not realistic. Especially, that may not be realistic. Right. So it may be more realistic to say, I'm going to have this in moderation. So that's where you get into like, titrating yourself off or the harm reduction. It's less harmful. Right. And what harm reduction is less harmful to have something. And again, this is not applicable to everything. So I'm not talking about individuals that are addicted to, illegal or illicit drugs and stuff. I'm not talking about that. Right. We're talking about the regular stuff, like, I'm not going to eat chocolate, but to tell yourself, like, I'll never eat it again is an absolute. It's absolute. So what ends up happening is that, you feel like you almost want it more because now it's like a forbidden fruit. Right. Right. No, so so when you think about that, you got to think about it sometimes in that context. Yeah. Like it might be easier to say, you know what, I can't have it right now. And I'm not messing because I'm doing something different. But eventually, and when I have it, I'm going to have it in it'll be like a treat in a sense. I got you. Because that's the thing. Like we tend to, whatever it is, too much of anything is not a good thing. No, it ain't. You know what I mean? So that's, too much of anything has the potential to be not so good. Sure do. But okay, so one of the things to go back, because those are the very good examples. I want to say, like, we also need to be patient with ourselves. You know what I mean? So when we take smaller steps to achieve a goal, it helps us to then see more of our success. Right. And it also helps for that success to be more long lasting.
Gotcha.
And this when we see people who have achieved things in their life, whether it's weight loss, whatever the case may be, not smoking, things like that. Like it has been a process for them.
Right.
And it's something that because they've taken their time with that process, the results are much more long lasting. Right. Because I have members in my family who stopped smoking, and have not picked up a cigarette in probably 10, 15, 20 years. Wow. You know what I mean? Wow. So that's what you want, if you, especially that kind of health related sort of habit, because that is a health related habit. But you need to be patient with yourself the same way, and encouraging to ourselves. We want to encourage ourselves to stay the course, stay consistent, but be kind to yourself when you need like the break, or if that, okay, I'm going to be going somewhere or doing something that I know I'm going to be around, whatever it is that I want to stop doing, or I'm not going, or I'm going on a trip and I'm not going to be able to work out 2 hours every day, 7 days a week or whatever, allow yourself a little, give yourself some, a break, or, come up with some alternatives beforehand so that you can still be successful. And cause there's a lot of shame. And like I said, a lot of shame and regrets and that type of thing when we feel like we aren't successful or we aren't achieving. And then we sort of, throw everything out the window. We're like, okay, forget it. I had the piece of chicken. Now I'm gonna have a piece of pie, cake. And I'm just going to party it up now. I
do say that to myself. I do say, I do say, I had the chicken, what?
Might as well go on and
forget the day. The day's over. I'll start the next day.
Okay. And that's another thing too, when you're going to start, whatever and look, we all go through this. We all go through this. Another thing I would suggest as we wrap up, is it might also be a good idea, I've given a lot of thoughts, is to create a word or a mantra for yourself for 2022 to guide you,
I like that.
As to what you want to accomplish, where you're going, that type of thing, how you want to live, whatever. So, how you want to walk through life, whatever it is. And this can be similar to setting an intention. So it might be, for, one of my areas that I work with individuals on is on, dealing with behaviors and symptoms related to ADHD. Right. So sometimes like a word might be, focus or stay focused.
Right.
But another word could be, live with intention, and like a phrase, a mantra or whatever. Because, a mantra is something that is said repeatedly, or, and so it helps us to guide, to guide our behavior. And so I would suggest, another suggestion is setting something like that for yourself. You know what I mean?
I do that with one of my son's players. I came up with an acronym, ABC. So when I see him, I said, you know what your problem is? You're not confident. I said, so every time I see you, I'm just going to say ABC. Always be confident. Always be confident. Right. ABC.
And so what happens is that's a trigger. It triggers us. So the same way how something can trigger us in a negative, we can create triggers to create a positive.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times a word or a mantra or a couple of words, you don't want to make it like a super long paragraph, but something that, you can easily say to yourself. It's just like in Finding Nemo.
Okay. It's been a while since
what was
I watched
it?
that.
Wait, hold on. I'm paranoid, but it's like, keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And that's a mantra. Right. That's a mantra.
That's right.
When you think about it, it's something that is motivating, keeps you on. So it keeps you on the course, whatever it is. Because here's the thing: anything that you're trying to do differently from what you've always done is going to be uncomfortable sometimes, and it's going to be challenging.
Yep.
So, but it's not that it can't be done.
Right. You just got to get past that threshold.
Yeah. And that's going to come at different times.
Absolutely.
So that's when just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Yep. And I hope that, I don't know if that, I think that's the phrase, but I remember I can see it. Like I can see,
just keep swimming.
Yes. Just keep swimming. Yeah. And, so here are a couple of things is, certainly we are on subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? We, we will be revisiting you again in the new year. We'll see you in 2022. That's for sure. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. On Facebook, one of the things, and it also just kind of covers over to Instagram, is, I put inspirational things, just things on there, coming from me.
Yeah, very motivational.
I try.
I share them all the time.
Yes, I read them. I appreciate it. Yes, just things to get us thinking about different things and what have you.
Absolutely.
It is, it's my thoughts, and sometimes I'm motivated by things I read or things I hear.
Right.
Things that I feel like. Sometimes like there are themes I feel like in my sessions for the week. So things that come up that I feel like would be advantageous to share, in general, not what, my clients are saying, but just things in general for us to think about and to also to put something positive in our mind. A lot of times, we can bring a lot of negative stuff into our head, but we need to bring some positive stuff too. But yeah, so definitely follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And until next time, be well, be great, and be you.
Yep.
See you in 2022.